retail data is changing the way brands connect with consumers in real time in a couple different ways. I'd say the first and most obvious one is we're now able to connect clients' first-party data with the retailer's first-party data and collaborate in an anonymized and privacy-friendly way, but able to connect and look at overlays of transactions, life changes, all those kinds of good things. But let me give you the second case that I think is equally as interesting. We're also able to connect retail data in a physical location to that of media and other kinds of behaviors. And that's becoming really interesting, and I think for me, those are insights we haven't been able to see in real time. And so we're able to look at those behaviors, prior to transactions, post-transactions, to try to decipher patterns so that we can start to build learnings to be able to effectively, communicate on an ongoing basis with consumers.
So from bridging the physical shelf and the digital shelf, wanted to know how PMG is helping clients move from performance-driven campaigns to more brand experiences powered, again, by data.
Well, look, PMG is helping clients bridge, performance media and brand media really by driving results. And I think at the end of the day, every client has a scoreboard. And even though the scoreboard in some cases is about bottom line sales or more on top line awareness, every client is asking us for more performance and more accountability. And so at the end of the day, our job is to make sure we're moving all those metrics in the right direction. And typically, you can't generally have the bottom of the funnel metrics unless you have some of the top of the funnel metrics.
Sam, what's the biggest unlock you've seen when marketers apply retail insights beyond the point of sale?
So the biggest unlock we see in applying data, beyond the point of sale is understanding the whys of which consumers are or are not consuming our clients' products and services. And let me give you a practical example. We have a QSR brand that we've seen having some consecutive weeks of pretty poor sales. And one of the insights that we got was that the audiences were primarily Latino. And so, interestingly enough, when you see macro things like some of the immigration and some of the other things going on, we see real impacts at the bottom line. And so the next question is what can we do to support those audiences, to connect with those audiences in ways to drive them back to the franchise and feel good about the things that we're doing.
So on the way that you can use data to really make that personal connection that reintroduces consumers to a brand, want to also look at the flip side in terms of how privacy changes and signal loss are shaping your approach to precision audience planning.
Well, so there's no question that signal loss, privacy issues are changing the way we're approaching the marketplace, and I think probably the biggest unlock for us has been around contextual. We've been able to take both context of not only the client's creative, but also the context of the environments that we're advertising in, and use some of those signals to inform campaigns. And what we're seeing in those instances is there's sort of two big findings. One is, in some cases, we can find those environments that have high contextual relevance and that are outperforming. But there's an inverse of that too, is we also see some environments that have very negative correlations to outcomes. So we can eliminate those environments. And so, I think the privacy and data signal loss, while you may see it in some areas, we're seeing it increase in other areas in ways that are very consumer friendly.
Wanted to kind of consult your internal crystal ball for this one, Sam. Wanted to know what excites you most about how precision retail data will evolve brand measurement and growth in the next year.
All right, so if I take out my crystal ball and I think about how retail data will help evolve sort of our targeting, I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is that we're learning a lot about sort of all the consumer touch points beyond some of our clients' four walls or their digital properties. And so we're seeing things around life stages, seasonality, need states that we wouldn't have ordinarily seen without some of that data. And also understanding affinities, understanding everything from drive times, understanding consumer occasions, all those kinds of things.